You're listening to Soul Growth with me, Jade Stoner. Here we go beyond performance and surface level success and return to your true source of power, you. When you come home to yourself, when you allow your soul to lead, you access a depth of peace, safety and self-trust that success alone was never meant to fulfill, without losing your edge, ambition or vision. You get to live a life that feels as eternally rich as it looks outwardly impressive, and it begins within you. Hello and welcome to today's episode of Soul Growth, which is part one of a two-part episode where I'm getting into all the laws of the universe. I've been looking forward to doing this episode with you for a while because I feel like when you understand all of the laws from a bird's eye view and you see how they all work together, you'll better understand why some things in your life may not be working for you so well right now and what to shift to become the match for all of your soul desires so that you can not only receive them, that's just one part of it, right? But also keep them all too. So up until around maybe 2017, the only universal law that I knew of was the Law of Attraction. That's the most popular one, right? I watched The Secret way back in like 2006 before it was ever really a thing, and read the book, and it's the one that most people talk about on social media, and they tell you like, do this one thing and then poof, you're going to have all of this stuff. It's all based around the Law of Attraction. So it's the one most people try to work with, and while it is a really powerful law, it's just not the only one. And trying to work exclusively with the Law of Attraction without understanding like how all of the other pieces of the puzzle fit together is kind of like trying to live your life eating only one food group. Like it's not going to do much for you, right? So there are 12 spiritual laws that I know of. Some people say there are more, like I've heard 18, even more than that I've heard. And if and when I do learn about any others, I will share them with you. But for right now, as of this time of recording, I've learned about 12. And I'm going to be sharing about those laws with you in today's episode. So these laws have existed since the beginning of time, and ancient cultures have always intuitively known about these laws. And they probably lived in harmony with them too. But just like as with most things over the centuries that can't be measured and understood intellectually, they've just been lost and ignored and shunned. So we've just lost touch with them. I think that losing touch with that side of ourselves and those things that are universal laws, that's why there's been so much discord and people living their lives in ways that don't work and make them miserable and sick and frustrated, and all of the things that we see coming up in society today and the things that people are struggling with, right? But not me and not you, my friend. We're the ones waking up. We're challenging the status quo and we're doing things differently, breaking the cycles and changing the game for not only ourselves, but for all the generations that are going to come from us, right? One day we're going to be that ancestor that is looked back on as being like, yeah, they're the one that healed our family line and our lineage, That how exciting is that? So what are these 12 universal laws? Let's get into them. So number one is the Law of Oneness. Now, this is the law that says that we are all one. We're all connected. So if you think about this like an ocean, all of us collectively are the ocean, but individually we're like drops of that ocean. For me, I kind of get this law, but also it's something so big to get your head around, right? Because it's easy to kind of go, okay, yeah, within the confines of your own space, like within your own bubble of life. But then you go out into the bigger world and you look around at people and the way some people carry themselves and the things they do and the way they act and the way they behave, and you're like, no, how the hell could that possibly be a part of me? So it's a lot to get your head around, but nonetheless, it's still a law, the Law of Oneness, right? And I feel like to the extent that you do or don't feel this, you're going to feel disconnected from life. So if there's nothing else that you take from this law of oneness, just understand that we are all connected. We don't have to know how. We don't even have to agree with it. It's just, it is, right? And also using this law, I want you to think about how you interact with other people. So what you will for others, you will on yourselves. And what you see in others is also a part of you, right? So when you look at somebody else and you see them behaving in a way that isn't how you would choose to behave, if you look at this another way and see that behavior as a mirror, and then look at yourself and say, what inside of me does connect with this behavior, this way of being? What is it in me that could be connected to this personality trait, right? When we start to spin it back on ourselves, then we can use it as a way to heal ourselves. Because often the things we see outside of ourselves are just reflecting back to us what's inside, and you'll understand that a bit more when I get into one of the other laws in a while. So blaming others means you're blaming yourself. It doesn't work. So stop looking outside of yourself, stop looking at other people and what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong, and bring the focus back to yourself. You're the only one that you can control. And what do I need to do within this? What do I need to do within myself that I can correct? Not correct, that's not the right word. What can I do to move myself to a higher level, a higher vibration, which is the next law, the law of vibration, and so that I don't resonate with this thing. So number 2, law of vibration. So this law is the concept that everything in the universe is vibrating, and each person and thing holds a vibration. So when we think about this in terms of manifesting our desires in our lives, understand that the things you want, they do exist. Those desires have been placed inside of you for a reason, and they exist on a specific frequency, a specific vibration. And your work, your journey, is to move yourself to that vibration, to become a match for the things that you desire. So most people have typically done this through only focusing on the law of attraction, positive thinking, then I'm going to get there. But they don't, because it's not about what you're consciously thinking, it's about what you hold in your body, your subconscious thoughts, your energy, and all of those kind of things. That's why it's so important to do the healing and the inner game work. And when you do that, you start to, for want of a better way of putting it, you start to clean up your vibration, and you will start to elevate and become a match for the things that you desire. So the general rule of thumb is that the good things in life are on a high vibration, and bad things are on a lower vibration. You may remember that in episode 17 that I shared with you about the scale of consciousness by David Hawkins. And if you look at that, you'll see that the lower vibrational thoughts like hate and frustration and all of those kind of things, they vibrate at a specific frequency. So they're low numbers. They're like 2s and 3s and 8s or whatever they are. And then you've got the high vibrational stuff. So love and peace and happiness and joy. And they're a much higher vibration. And this is all the law of vibration in action. If you think about it in another way, if you think of yourself like a radio, and we know that there are multiple radio stations out there. And as you know, I love 90s R&B, especially slow jams. So I'm there listening to that channel. I'm there vibrating on that frequency. And as well, there also exist other channels that are playing, pop and rock and jazz and whatever other genres of music that I can't think of right now. So that's all to say that all of these things exist out there. It's just that when you're listening, when you're tuned in to one frequency and one vibration, that's all you can hear. What that looks like in your life means that's all that you can receive in your life. So again, you have to become a vibrational match for the things that it is you desire so that they can come together. And if you're just using the law of attraction and you're just thinking positive thoughts, so let's say you're thinking, I'm a millionaire. I don't know. I'm a millionaire, but inside you have thoughts, unconscious thoughts that you've heard in childhood and have been reinforced to you through society, and you've heard other people say, and all of the things that money is bad and good people don't have money and you're a good person, then that's a vibrational mismatch. So you can go on all day saying, I'm a millionaire, I'm a millionaire, I'm a millionaire, I love money, money loves me, and all of those kind of things. But there's a part of you that's vibrating at a level with these beliefs of money's bad, good people don't have money, I can't be spiritual and have money, whatever that thing is. And that's, again, why it's really important to do the inner work. So the next law, number 3, is the law of action. And this is kind of as it says. It's the law of action. It means that you have to take action. So we're not just spiritual beings, right? We're also physical, and that's why action is required. So what a lot of people have picked up from watching things like The Secret, and by the way, this isn't me slating The Secret. I use it because most people know it, have seen it, have read it, whatever. It's an amazing resource. It's woken up a lot of people. There's just lots more to it than what could be presented in an 1.5-hour movie, right? So I'm not putting The Secret down. I'm just using it as an example because, like I say, it's what most people understand. So most people read The Secret, they watch The Secret or something related to the law of attraction, and then they take their positive thinking and they meditate and they pray and they visualize all day long, which is all of the inner work, but then they don't do anything. They don't take action in real life. And when you don't take the action, you're not going to get the results that you want in your life, because we are physical and spiritual beings. We operate in both. And you see this when you think about people who pray. They pray and they pray and they pray, giving away their power, and then they don't take action. And when people pray and don't take the inspired actions that come to them, they're sent the signs, they're sent the signals, and they ignore them. They then make a decision that prayer doesn't work. Same with the law of attraction. People write down their desires, they visualize them, they do all of that kind of stuff. But then when it's time to take action, they don't do that. And then, of course, their desires can't come to them. And then they decide, oh, it's because the law of attraction doesn't work. But there is this law of action, which means that we have to take action. Another analogy for you. Imagine ordering food on Deliveroo or Just Eat or wherever. The food comes to the door and you just sit on your ass. There's no one else in the house, by the way. No one else to get the door. But there's the food at the door and you're just sitting on your ass and you don't get up to get the door. Well, you're not going to get your food, are you? You have to get up and you have to open the door and you have to receive the food. And it's no different when you are taking these laws and you're applying them to your life and you're going out to manifest, to create, to make real the desires that are inside of you. No physical manifestation happens without physical action. And sometimes that action is just to surrender, or just to get up and answer the door, just to receive, right? And when I talk about action, I'm talking about inspired action. So we're not talking about action for the sake of it. We're not talking about action that is, you feel like it's not happening fast enough, it's not happening quick enough, and you haven't had your inspired idea yet. You haven't felt something inside of you or heard a whisper inside of you, and you're just doing something. You're just trying to take action through brute and sheer force. No, that's not it. I'm talking about the action that's natural. It's not forced. It comes from a place of inspiration. It feels like it's almost automatic and playful, and it's light. And from that place of action, that's when everything feels effortless and it flows. So action is the bridge between your inner and your outer game. And the action may be quote unquote small, it may be quote unquote big. It doesn't matter. All those steps add up. It's about inspired action. That's the key. So taking inspired and aligned action is the bridge between what you see in your mind's eye and making it real in your life. So the next law, number 4, is the law of correspondence. As within, so without. So in order to change anything in your physical world, you must first change it in your mental, emotional, energetic world. That's why you might have heard me say or seen me share that for things outside of you to change, something inside of you has to change first. Here's some more analogies for you. If you think about a tree, when we look at a tree, what we see is what's above the ground. And what's above the ground comes from what is planted below the ground. You can't grow an acorn tree from a wildflower seed, right? So you can't expect to have something in your physical world, in your outer world, if you haven't planted the correct seeds and become the fertile ground for that desire to grow from inside of you. Think about another way. So think about an iceberg, right? We can see what's above the water, but we can't see what's below. If you think about this in terms of you, the top of the iceberg, the tree parts that are above the ground, that's the results that you have in your life. But they came from what's underneath, the roots, what's below the waterline, and that is your beliefs, your habits, your past experiences, and all of that kind of stuff. And what the problem is that most people look outside of themselves to try and fix things. So they look at what's above the water, what's above the earth, and then they try to change what's above the water, what's above the earth, without going back to the root of it. It's like people treating the symptom and not the cause. And you see this kind of stuff all the time. You see this with people that are in relationships. So they're in a relationship, things aren't working out. They're like, you know what, this isn't for me, and they move on to the next person. And then some time passes and they're like, you know what? You kind of remind me of my ex. You know what? I'm done. I'm out. Bye. And they keep moving from relationship to relationship, fixing what's above the surface, but without ever taking stock of what's underneath the surface. You're the common denominator of everything. So in this relationship example, this person is the common denominator moving from relationship to relationship. The outside circumstances are changing, or at least they look like they're changing, they look different, but actually they're coming from the same seeds that are inside of the person. So in order for things outside of themselves to change, to have a different experience in their relationships, they need to flip things on their head and look at what's going on inside of them, what part of them is available for this kind of stuff, what frequency, what vibration they're vibrating at that is attracting these circumstances into their lives. So other examples that I've shared to put this into context, you've heard me share about diets before. The reason that most diets don't work is because people are only changing what they're eating, what they're putting into their bodies. They're only changing what's above the surface, but without looking at what's below the surface, their beliefs about food, their beliefs about whether they believe it's safe to be a lesser weight, a smaller size, and about standing out and all of that kind of stuff. So this is the law of correspondence. And until you fully grasp this concept that everything starts within and within you, you'll never be able to truly own your personal power. So it's really, really important that you stop looking outside of yourself for someone or something to quote unquote fix you, right? Firstly, you're not broken. And secondly, you need to start looking inside of yourself for the answers. You know, the resources outside of you, like this podcast and coaches and mentors and books and all of the things, they're there to support you to dig in, but ultimately they're there to bring you home to yourself and your power, to show you that how to get back to your power. And this story is the reason that all of the inner game work, like healing from your past and editing your subconscious beliefs to match your desires, it's so, so important. And also relevant to this law, it's about being mindful of your influences, you know, who you spend time with, what you're feeding your mind, where you're spending your time. Because all of that impacts what is being planted underneath the surface and therefore what will show up in your life. So think about it this way. Your life is like one big selfie. Law number 5 is the law of cause and effect. And this is what is often referred to as karma, right? Whatever you sow, you reap. Another way to put it, the bill always becomes due. So one of my exes, he always seemed to get away with so much. And he treats people like absolute shit. He's not a very nice person behind closed doors, but fronts to the world like he's something else. And he just seemed to just be living his best life and get away with things all the time. And then all of a sudden, after all of these years, all of this shit started happening to him. And the reason that I share that with you is because that is literally the law of cause and effect in action, right? There's no escaping it because it's literally a universal law. And you might think that somebody's getting away with something, but eventually the bill will become due. That karma will catch up with them. Now, for some people, the karma might not catch them until their next lifetime. You know, some of us, some of the experiences that we're living through today in this lifetime is our karma from past lifetimes that we've lived through. And whilst we consciously can't remember them, it doesn't mean that they're not relevant. You know, all of that lives inside of us and it's what plays out. And this is why also it's so important to heal your inner game, to heal this past karma and I guess pay your dues for it, right? So how you treat others matters. You know, it's like throwing a boomerang out. It's going to come back to you at some point or another. And I don't want you to take this as something to fear. It's just something to become really aware of and just to become aware of. You know, it's really, really key. So this is about you, again, doing the inner game work to heal from your past so that you're not tempted to lash out and hurt other people. When you lash out and hurt other people, it's a boomerang, right? And there's that saying, only hurt people hurt. When you look at it from this point of view and you think about, well, if I heal myself, I'm not going to hurt, so then I'm not going to put hurt out there, so then the hurt's not going to come back to me, right? And of course, it's not always true that hurt people hurt. I've lived through a lot of my life carrying around a lot of hurt and didn't go out and behave like an asshole. You know, it's not an excuse. It's just to say that more times than not, though, yes, hurt people do hurt. But it doesn't have to be that way. So just something to be aware of. And also that when you put shit out there, let's say you're hurting and, you know, you direct that hurt towards a single person, it doesn't mean that the hurt's going to come back from that person, from that place, from that same source. It doesn't mean they're going to treat you like shit back. You know, maybe that will come back to you like you ordered something online and your parcel goes missing and so you don't receive your delivery, or you lose some money, or your kids give you attitude. You know, whatever it is, the point is you boomerang out, it's going to come back to you somewhere. And again, this isn't about scaring you, right? We're human. I lose my shit sometimes. And also, yes, I am spiritual. And that doesn't mean that you should tolerate shit from people. It's okay and needed sometimes. And you'll know inside of you when it is the right time to say that. Like it's not coming from your head and your ego, but to tell someone to fuck off sometimes. That is needed. Everything has its place in life. So this isn't about trying to be a perfect human, because as you've heard me share before, perfect doesn't exist, right? This is just about you becoming more aware of how you show up in life for yourself and for others. And this law of cause and effect, it's not just about focusing on the so-called bad stuff and the negative stuff. This is about the good too. Good comes back too. So when you do things in love and kindness and from a place of joy, that energy will come back to you too. This law, when you look at it in terms of creating the life your soul is calling you to and the one that you're dreaming of, is about keeping on going. Every step that you take is a seed that you plant. And that seed may not bloom straight away. We hear these overnight success stories, but actually there's no such thing as an overnight success, right? That overnight success that we see is the culmination of years of sowing seeds, years of showing up, years of doing the work. Some of my story. This stuff isn't new to me. I started out in personal growth, in personal development back in 2010. It's now 2023. That's 13 years. So while some people may look at me or listen to this and think, oh my gosh, she really knows her stuff. She's so well spoken. She's so confident, blah, blah, blah. That stuff didn't just happen. I didn't read one book and then decide, I'm going to go do this thing. And then, it all came together. This is years of seeds being sown. This is the law of cause and effect in action. One of my favourite stories is about the giant bamboo. And if you get an opportunity, go on YouTube, type in the giant bamboo story. It's amazing. But very briefly, it tells a story of how giant bamboo grows. So you plant these bamboo seeds and you water and fertilize it every day. You do that for a year. There's no evidence that this bamboo is growing. You do that for another year. No evidence that this bamboo is growing. You do that for another year. There's no evidence that this bamboo is growing. Now, let's be real. Most of us humans would have given up already. Probably on week 1, we would have been like, fucking, it's not working. It's not growing. Let me just not bother. But here's the thing. In year 5, after 5 years of watering and fertilizing that seed day in and day out, that bamboo grows 90 feet in 6 weeks. That is an overnight success. Nothing for all of those years, and then boom. And actually, if you go and look at a lot of celebrities, well-known people that we know of, and you actually look at their stories or you read their biographies, watch their TV shows and documentaries, you'll hear and see the same things. I heard the other day that Taylor Swift, someone shared a story that she was doing stuff back in the days of MySpace. I was like, MySpace? MySpace is years ago. I think MySpace was out when Jaden was a baby. Jaden's 16, almost 17 now. The point is, people look at Taylor Swift today and all she is and all she's achieved, and it's amazing. It's not to take away from that stuff. And it's also look at where it is that she's come from. Same with Lizzo. I've heard that, she's been putting in the work, doing her thing for years. This is what an overnight success is in the real world. It's putting in the work when nobody's watching, when you think no one's listening, when you think no one gives a shit. All of the things. This is the law of cause and effect. It's a law. What you reap, you must sow. And you may not reap it straight away, but you will reap it. So be patient. Do the things and keep doing the things. It all adds up. And this has been echoed through the stories that I've just shared with you, but you don't reap in the same season that you sow your seeds. You think about that in terms of physical seeds. If you think about I don't know, potatoes and other vegetables. You don't plant the seeds and then next week, boom, you've got potatoes and carrots and whatever else you've planted. Those seeds were planted in the past, like a year ago or however long it takes to grow those things. The concept of dig your well before it's thirsty has just popped into my mind. So I share all of this with you to say, like, what seeds do you need to go and plant now? I know that we live in this instant gratification world and, we want everything and we want it all now. But that's not a conducive mindset for success. And you're here for more. So what is it that you need to do? And remember, there's a natural gestation time. And that gestation time is going to be different for you than it is for me, than for someone else, because it's all filtering through our internal world, our inner game, our thoughts, our beliefs, our traumas, our experiences, our, how we grew up, where we grew up, all of that. And that's okay. Keep on going. So, the last law that I'm sharing with you for this episode, number 6, is the law of attraction. So, as I've shared with you throughout this episode, you're probably well versed in this law because it's the most popular. But as you're starting to understand the other laws, you can see how they all work together. And you can't just work with one law, like the law of attraction, and ignore the rest, right? There's more to life than the law of attraction. And this also succinctly explains why this law doesn't work for everyone, or it only works a couple of times or on a few manifestations, but it isn't consistent. Because, just taking the law of vibration as an example, you need to also incorporate that and consider that in relation to what it is that you want to bring into your life. So I did an entire episode on why the law of attraction may not be working for you, which is episode 4. I invite you to go back and listen to that because you're going to have new clarity with it now that you understand a few more of the 12 universal laws. And also because one of the ways that we learn is through repetition. So when you think about the law of attraction again, think about it in terms of love. Let's say you want love in your life, but you're not vibrating at the level of love. You're regularly frustrated and you're bitter and you're full of resentment about your ex or your old boss or whatever. And then you're wondering why love isn't showing up for you. You can see that, that doesn't work. Desperation and neediness and other things like that, they repel. So when you're in those kind of energies, you're not going to attract into your life the things that you want. Think about someone in your life who you've experienced with those energies. Like maybe someone that was into you, but like they were doing way too much. And you know that feeling, right? It just feels icky and like, ugh. And you just know it's not the one. You're just like, get me away and get me away quick. That's how your manifestations feel about you when you're carrying all this crappy energy inside of you. So, of course the law of attraction can't work. So, are there times when you're using that energy, that lower vibrational energy, are you projecting that towards the things you want to manifest in your life? You need to shift your energy. It's almost like you need to filter the water. The water's dirty and you need to start filtering it so it can get clearer so that you can see, so that the things that you want can come into your life. And gratitude is a really great way of doing that. And I did an episode about gratitude, episode 20. Again, go back, check that out. And also the episode about forgiveness. Forgiveness is another way to filter that water, to clear that tank, so that you can become more of a match for the things that you want. You have to become a match internally and energetically for the things that you desire. And again, you have to do the inner game work. There's just no getting away from it, This is what I started out by sharing, we're the ones that are here to break the cycle. This is how we break the cycle. We filter the goddamn water. We do the inner game work. And when we elevate ourselves up to that higher level, when we come from a cleaner energy, guess what? We teach those around us to do the same. And I don't mean teachers in like speaking or anything like that. It's just like an energetic thing. Like people feel it, people sense it, and then they wanna do things. So as I mentioned like repetition is one of the ways that we learn. So even if you've already listened to the Law of Attraction episode that I recorded, I think it was like, what did I just say it was? Episode 3, episode 4, one of those, episode 4. So go back and listen to that, and you're going to be surprised at what new things that you hear and how differently you interpret it now that you understand these other laws. So that's it for today's episode and the first 6 of the 12 universal laws. Look out for part 2 of this episode where I'm going to be getting into the other 6 laws, and let me know which of these universal laws that I've shared has given you the biggest aha. I'd love to know. So until next time, I'm out. Big love. Mwah. Thank you for joining me on Soul Growth. There's something in this episode that was meant for you to hear. Whatever it activated within you, trust it, act on it. And remember, it's all soul growth.